Okay, hi guys. What I want to talk about in this video is the things I've learned over this past year with my brother living here. He taught me a lot of really good stuff about greenhouses and chicken coops, and I'm just going to focus on those two topics. But also, I have to say, even though I've been doing these narcissist videos, people don't really know me or know my family, and it's hard to explain it, but they're really, really freaking awesome people. They're really good people. They've done some great things throughout my family line, done great things to help mankind, to win wars against evil and save lives, and have this overly neurotic need to be right and do good. And, it's just, as with anything, nobody's perfect and people have flaws, and you can get off track even with trying to do good. You can be overbearing with that. So I'm doing these narcissistic videos because my brother has some spirits he doesn't see, and the church really can't help him see it. And it's not my job to help him see it, but it's my job to break the soul ties, and I haven't been able to talk to him personally. And it's also a metaphor for the church being under covering doctrine, because it's the same spirit I'm dealing with. But at the same time, I want to say, I was a really good mom. I love my kids so much, and, I would stay up all night with them, or I would hand sew them little things, I would sing them songs, I devoted my life to them. But I did have this narcissistic side of this false self that was made in me from abuse in my childhood, and rules I thought I had to follow, and this covering doctrine with the high priest at the home that's not in the Bible anywhere. So even though it was all this good fun stuff, field trips and, activities, and having brothers and sisters to share life with, my grown kids have, they've forgiven me for things I've done wrong, and they've also said they remember a lot of good times. So, those good times are real good times, and, God made life so good that even with all the bad stuff here on earth, it's still good. Like they joke about cold pizza, and sex is good, no matter, even when it's bad, it's good, which, that could be a lie, but I'm just trying to make a joke. Pizza's good, even when it's cold, it's still good, it's good. Life is good, even with all the mess down here on earth, life is good. But I wasn't a full-fledged narcissist. I was a narcissist when it came to rule following, and then I was this little goody two-shoes Pollyanna poster child for covering in the church, and I made my kids, I had a religious spirit, and I had all these wrong things, and it came down to the divorce and the cancer, and almost losing my children, a relationship with them, all at once, to make me see it, and not that I can make my brother see this. I can't even talk to him to even say my point of view about something. He talks nonstop so much you can barely get a word in edgewise. But for myself, I had to break it. I had to break going along and being polite, and that politeness is like me submitting to this covering and this high priest spirit and this covering doctrine, and I had to break it for myself. This is why I'm doing this. I'm not trying to hurt anybody. I'm not trying to cause any kind of problems or revenge or expose people's secrets. I could say a lot worse stuff, believe me. I could be nitty-picky and gross and bring up all kinds of foibles and eccentricities. I have weird stuff. Everybody has their weird stuff, and we don't need to be petty and picking on that. But even as I'm breaking these soul ties myself, and I'm doing this because I don't want to do this. I would really like to just say everything nice. But I have been saying the bad stuff, and I've made some videos saying, this is wrong behavior, and this is wrong behavior, and this is an unclean spirit of joking, and this is an anger spirit, and this is a control spirit, and this is a religious spirit. I seriously wanted to document that he has some really great qualities, and he has a heart for the Lord. He just was off track in some areas, like I was also. Really exact same thing, just in different packages. So I'm not saying I'm better than anybody, but also I really did learn stuff in 5 minutes. It takes me 5 minutes explaining a video, and then here you go. So with the chicken coop, he did this amazing feat of engineering where he didn't even use a 2x4 for it, and it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces of plywood, cheap or expensive, however you want to do it. And then I think he took 2x4s and ripped them down, or he just bought the 2x2s, and he did the corners. He made the platform on top of like 4x4s. You put the wood down, and he made the wall where the lip hangs over the bottom, and the wall is supported by the base. I think he made a 2x2 frame, and then he put the floor on it, and then he put the wall onto the 2x4 at the side, or maybe even it was just a 2x2 there also. And then in the corners, and the way he did the, if you know construction at all, you can get it from this. The sides, one side had the little chicken door at the bottom, and one side had, he just cut it and put hinges, and that made a people door, full-size door, just a couple feet wide, but full height, 6 feet high. But the roof was sloped, just like a lean-to, so he took like a foot maybe off the front and put it onto the back. So the back was taller a foot and the front was shorter a foot, and then the roof was sloped, and he put shingles on, tar paper and shingles on that, and a window on the front. And we would have put, he had a window with sliding shutters on the inside to open the air, and up on the top and the back you could drill doorknob holes and put those cylinder vents, or just some kind of vent so the air would go through the window and up the back. I could draw a little picture of that, I guess. But and then the shelf, so you come in the people door, which is the narrow side of the building, and you go across, and he had spackle trays that he drilled holes in and hung them on the wall a few inches off the ground, so it was for their scratch and gravel and their feed pellets, and it was off the ground, and it was neat. And he made a little box for if you wanted to have a nursery, but you can't have that in Norfolk, so we just stored the hay in there. But the shelf, he put 2 little runners on the wall, and he built a shelf with dividers so you can just take it off and sweep out all the hay and put it back. And then we stuffed that with hay, and that was their brood box. They could sit up there on the little shelf, and they could go out the little slidey door for the chickens on the bottom, and he attached a run to the outside of it. It was very cool construction. He built it in just a couple days. Not that expensive. I would say it was like $200 for supplies, maybe $250 to $300, because I got little hardware handles, knobs, and we bought this plastic variegated top for the run and some stain and stuff. But for a couple $100 you could probably build that. I would say it's like $500 if you hire somebody to do it, maybe $1,000, because I don't know what the labor is, the cost. The raw materials for like $200 to $300. And probably $1,000 to have someone build it for you, but you could do it yourself. And it needed to be sided. We never got that finished, but my neighbors have it now, because in Norfolk the rule is 10,000. It used to be 10,000. I have 10,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet, 6 chickens. The space, they need 6 feet per chicken, which we had that. Hens, no roosters, because it's in the city here. And we had, well, the 4x8 is 32 square feet, and the outside enclosed pen counts also. So they had enough square footage, but in Norfolk they don't want it visible from the street, and I would have had to build privacy fences all the way around my open yard. So my neighbors took it right around the corner. They unbuilt it with the screws, took them out, took the walls out, and rebuilt it at their house, and took my chickens, so they're safe from the fox that had gotten in there. And the other stuff I learned about the chickens is, like, they lay an egg a day or every other day. If they get upset about stuff, they don't lay for a while. Like when a couple of the chickens got eaten by the fox, they didn't lay for a few days because they were in shock. Poor babies. But when we first bought the chickens, when we went to a farm, he picked out ones that he saw already roosting together. We went at evening time, and it was sunset, and they were already together, so he said he wanted to get ones that were already friends. And that's a pretty clever tip, to get chickens that are already friends. They're not going to be fighting in your yard, you know, because he got them grown and laying already instead of waiting for them to grow up. So you could just start right away. And that was a very smart tip. Oh, and when he did the roost bar and little bars for them, he takes the 2x2 and he made it like an octagon, and pretty big, because they're giant claws. people have a ramp with a little piece of wood on it, and the chickens scatter and scatter, and that's like people's fantasy idea of what a chicken. They don't walk the plank like that. They like the nice big bar to roost on, and on their little door he made a nice big curve for them so they could hold it the right way. So they don't need a little skinny thing. They need a pretty 2x2 but rounded into a round, like a closet rod, but the octagon shape gives them something to grip, and they really like that a lot. And they like having different places to perch, up underneath the chicken coop run, or down low, or up high, or have a little shelf to walk on. And it makes them happy to have different things, their little chicken life. What I learned about having them was they poop all over your yard and they attract little tiny flies. So you don't want it right outside your back door, because these little tiny, it's great, it fertilizes your yard, but then you get these tiny little flies everywhere from the chicken poop. Didn't realize that would happen. And it's kind of expensive to have the feed. It's like, $10 for a bag, and then you got to get the scratch, which is $10. And I don't know if you can get them in different sizes. It's $20 to $40 a month. Maybe that'll stretch to 2 months, depending if you feed them supplemental food. So unless, you're feeding a big family, or you're able to sell them, and then you got to get permits and stuff, so that's a pain in the neck. But just having a couple chickens, that's not bad. If I could figure a way to do it where they wouldn't be outside my door, they'd be further away, and even when they're outside running around, they're not pooping right outside the back door where it's going to get the flies. Didn't realize that was going to come with it, the flies, That's why it's good on a farm. They could be further away from your house. But they ran around and ate the June bugs right out of the air. That was fun watching them eat bugs all summer. And they love to go under the blueberry bush and in the hedges and roost all different. They like to play around all different places. So I really did learn a lot about that. You don't have to refrigerate eggs. The stores keep them upstairs in storage and not refrigerated, and then they bring them down and put them in refrigeration. It's an American thing. In Europe, they don't do it. In America, they wash the eggs with some kind of a bleach chemical wash, and then it does soak into the eggshell a little bit. So when you crack the egg, it runs in the skillet more. If you have a homemade egg in your yard from an organic chicken, the egg, when you crack it in the skillet, it boings up, and it's got more albumin strength to it, and it's healthier, I think. But that was interesting and very tasty. When I learned about what chickens can eat, they can eat hard-boiled eggs, but you don't want to feed them chicken, but they can eat cooked eggs. And you don't want them to have crushed eggshells, because then they'll try to eat their own eggs after a while. But you can give them scraps and worms and little bits of people food. You can look that up, what they can eat. I really learned a lot about that. It was very interesting. So 12 minutes. So with the greenhouse, we made 16 by 32 feet. Oh my gosh. And so on the inside, it had 4 feet gardens. And then a little 2-foot path. It didn't even seem like 2 feet. And then 8 feet in the middle. Or was it 6, 2, and 2, and 3, 2? I don't know what it was. I would leave a bigger path and less garden because the plants grew so much they covered up the path. He did a design with rebar and PVC wire conduit pipes, make the curve, and that worked fine because the rebar you stick in the ground and you curve the 3 pipes connected and pop it on there. And the cross pieces at the hip height were wood, but the cross pieces overhead were pipe, and they buckled. So you'd have to do wood cross pieces across the top so that it didn't buckle. And this place where it is in my yard, it got sticks on it and got some holes in it from the hurricane, and it was just too big for this yard. And in the summer you couldn't really use it because it gets way too hot here in Virginia in the summer, so then a greenhouse is a hot house, and unless you're growing like orchids or something. I don't even know what you grow in 120 degrees, tropical stuff. The greenhouse, I learned, it takes a lot of work. It's like a full-time job, so if you're in the suburbs, less is more. That would be good on a farm. We used the dog-eared, I called them, because it's like the angled 6-inch wide planks fencing to do the garden borders. That worked pretty well. You just have to really tear out the grass and dig through that dirt and put in some fertilizer and organic matter and plant your stuff, But I would do smaller gardens And I learned that you can take the seedlings from the store and you can really save all 12 of those that you get. You don't have to pick them and throw them out. If you put it in a bowl of tepid water, you can let it, like a lady's hair in the bathtub, he said, you can let it shift around till you get those roots separated. And we saved miraculously. We could get 16 plants out of a little pack of, should be 3, you know. That was fun, seeing how many plants we could get out of a little pack. And, I was going to say something else about it that I learned. I mean, it's just hard work, but less is more. You could have one tomato plant and get so much out of it. Oh, yeah, so say, you know, the economy didn't collapse last September like they thought, or this summer, or even yet. And now with Trump as president, we're going to have a reprieve and have some years. And maybe it's like those years in the Bible where they have the 7 years of plenty and then the 7 hard years. I don't know. But you make hay while the sun shines. If we're going to have a season of good, then let's do some good. But we don't have to be growing plants right now because the stores are still here and they're doing great. Okay enough. But it only took a few months to get this thing up and running. So really, if you were desperate, you could live off your canned food or a little bit, you know, if you have 2 or 3 months worth of food stored, 30 to 40 days, canned tuna, peanut butter, dried beans and rice, you know, basic stuff. After your 3 months of dry food runs out, you could have something growing. So you really could do this pretty quickly. But you'd have to know if something crashed. And what I was thinking is, in being in the suburb, instead of having to build this whole structure, you could take one of these canopies, like one of those 8x8 canopies from Coleman that has the pole frame and then the canvas top and little corners. And you could make, the plastic was like $250 for that plastic. It was industrial, 5-layer UV scattering. It traps the light in there and then it bounces all around so you get the most out of the light. Buy some really good industrial grade plastic and have that on hand and put it over top of a canopy. You don't have to build a green and stake that down, and you'd have an 8x8 greenhouse already. And another thing I learned from doing this greenhouse over the winter was he put a tent inside the tent. So we had the greenhouse, and then the center section we did tomatoes in the middle of winter. That was really fun to have fresh, delicious tomatoes in the middle of winter. We have the tent within the tent, and that's an Indian technique that they would do also. So the air was such a buffer. If you got a small canopy and then put a big one over it, say put a 16-foot one over the 8-foot one, you'd have that 4-foot buffer all around. And you could put plastic over the inside and, you know, plastic over the outside, and the light would still get through, and you could just put a little space heater in the middle one, and you could grow crops all winter long in just that insulated canopy, 8-foot by 8-foot. You could do tomatoes and peppers and whatever basic vegetables you eat, broccoli, spinach, collards. So, and you could have hanging plants in there too. I thought that was interesting that you could do a little canopy one instead of a giant, huge one and still get a benefit out of it. One thing that was really cool, he got a little tiny electric toothbrush, a little kid's toothbrush, and he vibrated each. He would go around and tickle the blossoms to make sure they got pollinated. You could do it with corn, with tomatoes. Just vibrate it a little bit when it's, you know, a certain time of day when they're just opening. The little tiny yellow flowers close at night, but when they just open, you tickle them and the pollen falls around. And if you don't happen to have bees around, you can just go quick pollinate everything. This little electric toothbrush, that was genius. And I would leave a bigger pathway, but if you're just doing the little one inside the big one, just get to it from the outside, and the pathway is the 4-foot around it. And really, everybody was helping us and interested and excited about what we were doing and learning about it. And it was a very good learning experience. People just naturally like to work together and do something like that and share food and share. Like if you had a neighborhood where one neighbor's a beekeeper and one neighbor's growing tomatoes and another neighbor's growing, you know, herbs, and then you guys could share. If it comes to really bad times like that, where the stores aren't working anymore, you could get this pretty. I don't think we have to live in so much fear that we're not doing it right now, because that can come together pretty quickly in a few months. And a lot of people do have a lot of this knowledge, and there are books around, and we can just help each other out. It's okay. We'll make it. But in these next years that we have, if they're really prosperous, with Donald Trump making deals with Israel and good business deals with nations around the world and helping America prosper, we can all invest more in solar panels and have wells and wind power or whatever works for us. And we can all keep working towards having solar powered generators. And I'm gonna practice a small garden when I can, a little one that I can handle, because the big one was too much and we had to let it go. I couldn't keep it up. I just really wanted to say that, we helped a lot of people. We did. We shared the tomatoes, we shared the peppers, we shared the collards and the lettuce and the eggs, and it was really fun sharing with people and breaking bread with people, learning from other people, and other people learn from us. The biggest thing was how quickly we got it up and running, and that's because he knew what to do. And he'd seen it already in his head. Well, now I've seen it, and I could reproduce it. And, I think people could get a garden and stuff like that up and running pretty quickly. And I just really wanted to say some good things. He's a very special, wonderful, nice person. He has a lot of really good qualities, and not as bad as a lot of these people on narcissist websites say, how their entire life is all this bad stuff. It's not like that. I pray they get free, and I just have to go through a season of breaking soul ties and getting out of my dysfunctional habit of relating in my family, where we've had some issues. So we can be grown-ups, and we can be respectful of each other, and we can go through seasons of not being in touch, and then, if God puts us back together as friends and family, fine. And if he doesn't, that's fine too. God is in control. God bless you guys. And I just wanted to get that out there. I hope I remembered all my tips of things that I learned about gardening. I mean, maybe it doesn't seem like a lot, but it was stuff I didn't realize. Okay, bye.